Hashtag C.S. Lewis. There are seasons in a man's life when the sky seems made of iron and the earth beneath his feet feels less like soil and more like stone. In such hours, the heart is tempted to conclude that heaven has fallen silent, that the long winter has no intention of yielding to spring. Yet it is often in these very winters that the deepest work of God is being accomplished, not upon our circumstances first, but upon us. You who have walked through a hard season know its language well. It speaks in delays, in closed doors, in prayers that appear to rise no higher than the ceiling. It whispers questions in the night. Have I been forgotten? Was I mistaken to believe I was chosen? But the soul that is chosen is not spared the storm. Rather, it is trained within it. Gold does not complain of the fire if it understands what the fire is doing. There is a curious mercy in hardship. We would not have asked for it. Yet having passed through it, we would not trade what it has carved into us. Strength that was once theory becomes substance. Faith that was once borrowed becomes owned. The hard season strips away the illusion that we are sustained by applause, comfort, or visible success. It teaches us that we are sustained by something, or rather someone infinitely steadier. And now, there comes a whisper, not of despair, but of declaration. The hard season has officially ended, not because the world has suddenly become gentle, nor because every unanswered question has been resolved, but because its appointed purpose in your life has been fulfilled. Heaven does not waste suffering when the lesson has taken root, when the character has been forged, when the hidden foundations are secure. The season shifts. The chosen are often the last to recognize the turning of the tide. They have grown accustomed to bracing against the wind, and so when the breeze softens, they still stand guarded. Yet there is a difference between vigilance and fear. The same God who permitted the valley now leads you out of it. The night watch has ended. Dawn does not ask your permission to arrive. The anxieties that once ruled you no longer hold the same authority. The approval you once sought has lost its power. The dependency upon visible signs has given way to a quieter, sturdier trust. This is not accidental. This is transformation. Heaven's declaration is not merely about relief. It is about readiness. The hard season was preparation disguised as punishment. It was pruning mistaken for loss. You were never abandoned. You were being shaped. And now, as the season closes, do not cling to the identity of the wounded wanderer. You are not defined by the trial, but refined by it. The door that opens before you is not an escape. It is an entrance. The same hand that held you in the storm now beckons you forward. Not as one barely surviving, but as one strengthened, steadied, and unmistakably chosen. There are seasons in a man's life when the sky seems made of iron and the earth beneath his feet feels less like soil and more like stone. In such hours, even the smallest step forward demands a courage he did not know he needed. Morning arrives, yet brings no brightness. Night falls, yet offers no true rest. The world continues in its ordinary rhythm, but within him, something feels suspended, as though time itself has slowed to examine his soul. It is in this strange stillness that doubt often grows loudest. One begins to question not only the path ahead, but the very ground upon which he stands. The hard season has a peculiar way of narrowing one's vision. When surrounded by difficulty, it is tempting to believe that difficulty is all there is. The mind circles the same questions. The heart rehearses the same disappointments. What was once confidence becomes caution, and caution, if left unchecked, can harden into fear. Yet it is precisely here, in the apparent confinement of struggle, that unseen expansion is taking place. For while circumstances may feel restricted, The soul is being stretched. Iron skies are not signs of abandonment. They are often signs of formation. A seed buried beneath heavy soil might conclude it has been forgotten, when in truth it is being positioned for growth. The weight above it is not cruelty, but necessity. Without that pressure, it would never break open. Without breaking open, it would never rise. So too with the chosen soul. The season that appears to press hardest may in fact be the one that prepares him most completely. There is also this quiet reality: hardship reveals what ease conceals. When life flows gently, we may never discover the fragility of our foundations. We assume our strength is our own. We mistake comfort for character. But when the winds come and the familiar supports are removed, the truth is unveiled. What remains is not what was convenient, but what was genuine. And in discovering what is genuine, a man discovers who he truly is. The feeling of walking on stone rather than soil speaks to the loss of softness, the absence of visible fruit. Effort seems unproductive, prayers seems unanswered. Yet stone too has its purpose. It teaches balance, it sharpens awareness, it forces intentional steps. One cannot wander carelessly on stone. Every movement requires thought, and through that thought comes discipline. Through discipline comes endurance. If the sky has seemed unyielding and the ground unwelcoming, it does not mean the story has stalled. It means the chapter is deepening. There is a strength being written into you that comfort could never compose. The stillness is not emptiness. It is preparation. The silence is not neglect. It is concentration. What feels like delay may well be design. And though the season has felt long, its very length has been shaping a resilience that will not easily be shaken when brighter days demand a stronger soul. You who have walked through a hard season know its language well. It does not always shout. More often it murmurs, persistent and unrelenting. It speaks through delays that stretch far beyond your understanding, through doors that close without explanation, through opportunities that dissolve, just as they seemed within reach. It teaches you the weight of waiting, and waiting, as you have discovered, is not a passive thing. It is an active endurance of uncertainty. There are prayers you have whispered more than once, perhaps more than 100 times, believing that repetition might somehow hasten their answer. Yet the heavens appeared unmoved. Silence can be more unsettling than refusal. A clear no at least provides direction. Silence demands trust, and trust, when stripped of visible reassurance, feels like stepping forward in the dark, without proof that the ground will hold. In such moments, the mind begins to construct explanations of its own. Perhaps I misheard. Perhaps I was never chosen. Perhaps this sense of purpose was only imagination. Doubt is patient. It does not demand immediate surrender. It simply plants questions and waits for weariness to water them. The hard season often coincides with fatigue, and fatigue makes even the strongest convictions feel negotiable. Yet there is something remarkable about the chosen soul. Even when questions multiply, a quiet ember remains. You may have questioned the timing, the process, even yourself, but something within refused to abandon hope entirely. That ember, small as it seemed, was evidence that you were being sustained. It is not human nature to persist indefinitely in what it believes is meaningless. The very fact that you continued, however imperfectly, suggests that deeper than your confusion was a conviction you could not extinguish. The language of hardship also includes isolation. There are battles that cannot be fully explained to others. Advice, though well-meaning, often fails to touch the precise ache you carry. You smile when necessary, function when required, yet internally wrestle with thoughts you hesitate to voice. This isolation can convince you that you are uniquely burdened, singularly tested. But isolation in such seasons is often refinement. Certain lessons are learned only in solitude. Certain strengths are developed only when applause is absent. You have likely discovered that endurance is less dramatic than it appears in stories. It is not a single heroic act, but 1,000 small decisions not to quit. It is rising when you would rather retreat. It is praying when you feel unheard. It is believing, not with loud certainty, but with quiet persistence. The hard season has trained you in these unnoticed acts of faithfulness. And though the language of hardship has been difficult to translate, it has not been meaningless. Every delay has deepened your patience. Every closed door has clarified your direction. Every silent night has strengthened your inner resolve. What felt like contradiction was construction. What felt like rejection was redirection. The chosen are not identified by the absence of struggle, but by the way they are shaped within it, steadied by what sought to shake them, strengthened by what attempted to weary them, and prepared by what once seemed only to oppose them. There is a curious mercy in hardship, though it rarely appears merciful at first. Glance. When it arrives, it does not announce itself as a gift. It feels more like an intrusion, an unwelcome guest, rearranging the furniture of our carefully ordered lives. We resist it instinctively. We pray for its removal. We question its necessity. And yet, when time has granted us distance, we sometimes look back and perceive that what we once called cruelty was, in truth, craftsmanship. No one volunteers for the fire, yet gold, if it possessed a voice, might testify that the flame was not its destroyer, but its revealer. The impurities that lay hidden within it could not be wished away. They had to be drawn out. So too with the soul. Comfort has a way of allowing certain weaknesses to remain undisturbed. Pride can sleep peacefully in seasons of applause. Self-reliance can masquerade as strength when resources are abundant. But when hardship comes, these hidden elements rise to the surface. What was concealed becomes visible. What was tolerated becomes intolerable. What was tolerated becomes intolerable, for it is no kindness to leave a soul unaware of its own fragility. The exposure of weakness feels humiliating, yet it is profoundly compassionate. To discover where we are brittle is the first step toward becoming unbreakable. To see clearly where we depended upon the wrong foundations is to be invited to build upon firmer ground. Hardship does not create every flaw within us, but it certainly reveals them, and in revealing them, offers us the opportunity for transformation. There is also the strange way suffering rearranges our loves. Things that once seemed essential begin to lose their urgency. The approval of others, the pursuit of status, the relentless comparison with those around us. These ambitions begin to fade when survival of the spirit becomes the greater concern. What remains are simpler, sturdier desires. Truth over image, depth over display, character over comfort. Hardship has a refining effect upon our priorities. It sifts through them with unsentimental honesty. We often imagine that growth must feel triumphant, yet some of the most significant growth occurs in tears. The roots of a tree do not deepen in celebration, but in resistance. Wind forces them downward. Drought compels them to search for hidden water. In much the same way, the soul driven by adversity reaches beyond its former limits. It prays more sincerely. It reflects more deeply. It listens more carefully. These are not small developments. They are foundational ones. The mercy of hardship is not that it spares us pain, but that it ensures the pain is purposeful. It does not leave us as it found us. It carves where softness once prevailed. It strengthens where fear once dominated. It humbles where arrogance once lingered. And though we would not eagerly choose the fire again, we cannot deny that we emerged carrying something we did not possess before. A steadiness, a clarity, a resilience that comfort alone could never have bestowed. And now there comes a whisper, not of despair, but of declaration. The hard season has officially ended. Such a statement may at first feel too gentle to be trusted. After so long bracing against disappointment, the heart hesitates to believe in relief. One grows accustomed to scanning the horizon for gathering storms. Even clear skies can seem suspicious, yet the shifting of a season does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it enters quietly, like dawn, gradually dissolving the authority of night. The end of a hard season is not merely the removal of pressure, it is the completion of purpose. The trials you endured were not random interruptions, but measured chapters. Heaven does not experiment carelessly with the souls it calls chosen. Every delay, every unanswered question, every moment of stretching, an appointed boundary. When that boundary is reached, the season yields, not because you demanded it, not because you calculated it perfectly, but because its work within you has reached fulfillment. There is a temptation to measure the end of hardship solely by outward change. We look for dramatic reversals, sudden opportunities, instant restoration, visible vindication. Yet the truest evidence that a season has shifted is often internal. Where anxiety once ruled, there is steadiness. Where confusion once reigned, there is quiet clarity. You may still stand in similar surroundings, yet you no longer stand as the same person. The storm that once threatened to undo you has instead anchored you. Consider how differently you now respond to uncertainty. There was a time when the slightest delay unsettled you. Now you possess a patience that would have seemed impossible before. There was a time when rejection pierced deeply, convincing you of inadequacy. Now you recognize redirection where you once saw defeat. This transformation is not accidental. It is the evidence that the former season has completed its assignment. The declaration that the hard season has ended is also an invitation to release vigilance born of fear. During difficulty, constant alertness feels necessary. You guard your expectations, you temper your hopes, you prepare for disappointment, so as not to be wounded again. But a new season cannot be entered fully while clinging to the defensive posture of the old one. Strength is not the same as guardedness. Wisdom is not the same as suspicion. The resilience you have gained need not harden into cynicism. It is possible that the external landscape will change gradually, rather than suddenly. Doors may open one at a time. Opportunities may unfold in measured sequence, yet even gradual change carries the unmistakable mark of transition. The weight you carry so heavily begins to feel lighter, not because responsibility has vanished, but because fear has loosened its grip. You move forward, not with frantic striving, but with composed assurance. The end of a hard season does not erase what preceded it. It redeems it. The valley remains part of your story, but it no longer defines your direction. What once felt endless has revealed itself to be finite, and in recognizing its completion, you are invited to step into what lies ahead. Not as one barely surviving the remnants of struggle, but as one prepared, steadied, and ready to walk in the fullness of what was being prepared all along. The chosen are often the last to recognize the turning of the tide. After enduring a prolonged season of hardship, one becomes accustomed to survival. The posture of endurance settles into the bones. You learn how to brace, how to conserve strength, how to expect less, so that disappointment wounds less deeply. Even when circumstances begin to soften, the reflex to guard remains. It is not weakness, it is memory. The body and the soul remember what it cost to persist. Yet there is a subtle difference between wisdom gained from suffering and fear sustained by it. Wisdom says, "I have learned." Fear sustained by it. Wisdom says, "I have learned." Wisdom carries lessons forward. Fear drags the past along as if it was still present. When a hard season ends, the greatest challenge is not stepping into blessing, but believing that the blessing is real and permitted. After walking through shadow, light can feel undeserved, even suspicious. There is also the quiet humility that hardship produces. You have been stripped of illusions. You no longer assume control over every outcome. You have seen plans dissolve and expectations crumble. Because of this, you hesitate to declare victory too soon. You move cautiously, testing the ground as though it might again shift beneath you. And yet, part of the maturity gained in struggle is learning when to loosen the grip of constant vigilance. The turning of the tide does not erase the ocean's memory, but it does change its direction. The same strength you developed to withstand the storm is now meant to steady you in calmer waters. Endurance is not only for surviving difficulty, it is also for sustaining growth. The resilience forged in fire becomes the foundation upon which greater responsibility can rest. What once was required merely to endure will now be required to build. You may notice that opportunities approach differently now. Where once you chased affirmation, you now evaluate it. Where once you hurried to prove yourself, you now proceed with quiet confidence. The hard season refined your motives. It separated desperation from purpose. This refinement is part of the reason the season had to be long enough to change you, not merely your circumstances. There is a sacred moment when the soul realizes it no longer lives in reaction to pain. Decisions are no longer shaped by avoidance, but by vision. Hope returns not as reckless optimism, but as grounded expectation. You begin to anticipate good without denying the lessons of the past. This balance is the mark of someone who has been shaped, rather than shattered. To recognize the tide turning is to allow yourself to breathe without bracing. It is to stand upright without anticipating the next blow. It is to trust that the one who carried you through the storm is not finished guiding you simply because the winds have quieted. The hard season trained you in perseverance. The new season invites you into purpose, and though you may be slow to accept it, the strength that once helped you survive is now preparing you to advance with steadiness, clarity, and a courage no longer born of fear, but of formation.